Awesome. Thanks, Malcolm, for that. So next we've got Michele. Yep. Yahoo. So I've had the privilege to listen to Michelle's talks about educational psychology before, and I think, make sure you get your pens and paper out because there's a lot of information.
Quite efficient.
Valuable information. So welcome, Michele.
Thank you. That's actually working?
Yep. Just need to do that.
I'm Michele Blick, an educational psychologist, and I'm really happy to be here tonight because I love talking about my profession. I'm really passionate about it. So, there we go. Just a little bit of background about what educational psychologists are trained to do. So you can scan over that, I'll just pull some bits out. So a little bit like what the other psychologists talked about, we apply that psychological knowledge and theory. But for educational psychologists, it's around learning. We work in any situation in which learning takes place, and that could be the education and health sectors, social services, in the workforce with adults, community, and with whānau. So our knowledge base, what we draw on, is from child development, from learning, behaviour, mental health and wellbeing. And we're skilled at the identification, assessment and ongoing support of those who have complex and additional needs. And there's lots of collaborative work. So as you can see there, a whole list of people working with the child and young person, sometimes it's groups of students, whānau is really important, people in schools, and also lots of outside agencies. A little bit more about what we're trained to do. So we can work at individual and systems levels, and in a little while I'll talk to you about some of my work. So there'll be examples of what that looks like. The next point, these are really the principles that underpin our practice. So culturally responsive, inclusive, strengths-based, ecological, and again, that collaboration is really important. And of course, being responsive to the treaty. And as the other psychologists have mentioned, we adhere to that scientist-practitioner model. There's quite a bit of assessment we will often do, and it's really important to make sure those assessment tools we use are valid and reliable. All our data, all our decision making is data-based. So it's driven by data, as is all the progress and the outcomes. We work from that evidence-based and also engage in research. A little bit about my background. So I started 7th form, which is now year 13, and I'd always been a really excellent student, got the Diligence Award every year, but something just changed, and I think I'd outgrown the authoritarian Catholic girls' school that I was at, and it was February of my 7th form year, and I was at my friend's father's funeral, and it was really hot, and I took my big woolen blazer off and got a detention from the nun, and I just had enough. So left and went waitressing, wasn't sure what to do, went waitressing, and then decided, well, that kind of wasn't something that I wanted to do long term. I think that's when I applied to Teachers College, because I'd always wanted to be a teacher. I used to play schools with my younger brothers, and I didn't get in the first year. So then I thought, what do? I went to university. So that was in my, equivalent to year 13 year. Went to university. What do I study? Well, I always liked history, so why not study history? Then I did reapply for Teachers College and got in the second time around. So I've worked as a teacher for quite a number of years, teaching in Auckland, Wellington and Los Angeles. While I was teaching in Los Angeles, I was aware that there were so many gaps in my knowledge to really meet the needs of the kids in the classroom. I remember one boy in my class, and this was years ago in LA, and he obviously had a diagnosis of autism, but he wasn't diagnosed at that time. But I didn't know anything about autism, and I think about some of the ways that I worked with that child that was so inappropriate. I just cringe now, but that was my lack of knowledge. So I knew I wanted to know more, but I wasn't quite sure again what, and so I went into literacy, did a master's in literacy. Then a bit more teaching, then my last child started school, and that was that time in my life when I reflected on my career and thought, well, what do I want to do with this part of my life? And I'd always been interested in psychology, and I felt like adding psychology to my education background was just going to be perfect and was finally going to fill all those gaps in my knowledge that I had had for years. So I went into educational psychology, and again that was great for me because it's all distance learning, block courses, so I could juggle being a mother and also I needed to earn a living. And I worked in research, so I got research jobs through Massey University. The training to become an educational psychologist, there's 2 institutions where that happens. So it's at Massey and it's at Vic. And a minimum of 6 years. So you've got your undergrad, and then there's 3 years postgrad, and that includes a master's. And in that final year, that's your internship year, and that's 1,500 hours, which is actually full-time work, in addition to some papers. And I'll show you a breakdown in a minute. Usually students, you need an undergraduate in education or psychology. When I was at Massey, and it's changed, so the papers look different, but this will give you a little bit of a sense of what the training looks like. It is now called, instead of educational and developmental psychology. But this is what I did. So in the first year, so we're talking postgraduate, you've done your undergraduate degree. In the first year, it can be full-time or part-time, whatever you choose, there's 4 papers, and they're full-year papers. The next part is your master's thesis year, and that can be done over 1 year or 2 years. And there's another paper there, a professional practice paper. I did it over 1 year and it nearly killed me. But, so a lot of people do it over 2 years, but I didn't have the luxury of doing it over 2 years. I needed to get a job and earn some money. That last year is your internship year. So you've got 1,500 hours, you're placed somewhere, you're working full-time, and you're taking 4 papers. At the end of that, there's an oral exam, and you need to pass that oral exam. A little bit, this is just a tiny bit about the internship experience, because I think the email said talk a little bit about that. The word I would use to describe it for me was relentless. It was hard, really hard, but it's so worth it. I knew this is what I wanted, and I just kept going, but boy, is it hard. So I've got here, keep going, try not to get behind. What's really important is identifying self-care. Whatever that is, that's different for all of us. For me, exercise is important, but because I'm an introvert, actually time on my own and quiet time is what I need to rejuvenate. Other people seek social interaction. So I've got lots of lovely friends, but over that year, I didn't socialise as much because that didn't rejuvenate me. So you do get to know about yourself. I also got to know I got even better at managing stress. I was juggling a lot in that internship year. Immerse yourself in the profession. So make the most of opportunities, professional development that comes up. Grow your understanding of the profession. Find out the difference between the New Zealand Psychologists Board and the New Zealand Psychological Society. There's so much to learn. And really throw yourself into it, figure it all out. You won't figure it all out, but, I mean you won't, it's ongoing. But I suppose that's just really trying to learn as much as you can about the profession. And make the most of any networking opportunities. So I started right back then, and I had the most wonderful network, and that serves you well in your profession. And in terms of networking, there's lots of face-to-face events like this. But there are Facebook pages and there are Google groups. There are opportunities out there. Also in your internship year or when you're a student, a postgraduate student, I do encourage you to join a professional body. So for me, it was the Psychological Society. It's free. I was actually in my internship year, another thing I juggled was a student rep on the executive of the Psych Society. which was an wonderful experience. But join the Psych Society. Yeah, as I said, it's free. The PD is at a really low cost, and again, there's those networking opportunities. There's a monthly newsletter that comes out called Connections, and probably a lot of you have already joined that because you're here, you've heard about this event, but if you haven't, I do encourage you to do that. I'm chair of one of the institutes, so I'm chair of the Institute of Educational and Developmental Psychology. Free to join. So if you are going down the educational psychology pathway, I encourage you to join. It doesn't cost you anything. We do a lot. Again, there's PD. We do webinars. We organise professional discussions via Zoom because our students and our members are right throughout the country. So we're always trying to figure out how do we reach out to our membership. We have a newsletter. We have all sorts of networking opportunities. Internship. This is where I did my internship in RTLB cluster. Now you do need to be a teacher to be in an RTLB cluster. So not everyone who goes down the educational pathway has the teaching background. But for me, this was perfect because I was also on a full salary. That's another thing about internships. A lot of people go to the Ministry of Education, and the scholarship at the moment is about $20,000 a year. It keeps going up, somewhere around that. It has been increasing each year, but not a lot. So my internship was at resource teaching of learning and behaviour. That's what RTLB stands for. And there's 40 of those throughout the country. And I'm based in southeast Auckland. I'm still there. I identify as a psychologist working in an RTLB cluster. And just to give you a little bit of background of what that work looks like and what my internship year looks like, we get referrals for children from years 1 to year 10 and also early childhood transitions. We get referrals from 48 schools in southeast Auckland. And a referral will be around learning and or behaviour. So learning might be child's retention of learning, literacy, attention, oral language, and behaviour might be anxiety, aggression, self-regulation, engagement, social skills. So they're kind of the presenting issues, but my job is to figure out why. Why are these things going on? And, is it trauma? Is it fetal alcohol syndrome disorder? Is it self-concept? Is it specific learning disabilities? So, it's fascinating. There's a lot of collaboration, and I've listed there all the people, examples of some of the people I collaborate with. And the referrals, sometimes it's an individual, a child. Sometimes I've had referrals for a group. So the year 10 boys are really tricky when I get a group of year 10 boys, when they're disengaged and they're being suspended from school. I've had a class referral. Class, the behaviour was not good, so they were referred. Sometimes it's systems referral. So I'll do professional development at schools. Individual right through to systems referrals. And just in my workplace, the principles align with the way educational psychologists work. And I've just listed them there. I'm just aware of time, so I'll keep going. Internship opportunities. So most people seem to go to the Ministry of Education. And as I said, there's a study award. Most people seem to get that. It's around 27,000. RTLB, if you've got a teaching background. There are other opportunities in the education context, so sometimes working in a school or in a group of schools. I know in my year someone worked at, it was called Seabrook Mackenzie Centre in Christchurch, where they do assessment and tuition. There's Oranga Tamariki Health, so there's child and youth mental health services, so some of the interns have worked there. I know an intern at the moment, she's doing some work in a private practice, and she's also working in a forest school as well. And workplaces for educational psychologists. So the ministry is a big one. They're desperate for educational psychologists. There's current figures are actually, last year there were about 47 vacancies. At the moment it's in the high 20s, I can't remember. Oranga Tamariki, Health, RTLB, universities. Also, there's places like Explore, so that's where psychologists work, and they work within home around challenging behaviour. There's lots of providers with ACC contracts, so there's Focus on Potential, so that's rehabilitation for the people living with an injury, Youth Horizons, and just, and private practice. The recommendation is you would move into private practice after 3 to 5 years of being registered. That's another option where a lot of people eventually move. And that work is diverse and really interesting. And just some others there that I've noted. And that's it. I know I had 10 minutes, so here we go.